is read on.
Buenas and Hafide, Todos Hamzu. This joint informational briefing by the Committee on Federal and Foreign Affairs, Telecommunications, Technology and Labor, and the Committee on Heritage and the Arts, Parks, Guam Products, Hagatnya Revitalization, Self-Determination, and Regional Affairs is hereby called to order. It is now 2:26 p.m. For the record, and in accordance with Section 8107 of Chapter 8, 5 GCA, public hearing notices were sent on Thursday, March 8th, 2019, adhering to the 5 working day notice, and the second public notice on Tuesday, March 13th, 2019, 48 hours prior to today. In addition, this informational briefing was noticed on the Guam Legislature's website at www.guamlegislature.org. Joining me here this afternoon is Senator Dr. Kelly Marsh Taitano, and she's again the chairperson of the Committee on Heritage, the Arts, Parks, Guam Products, Hagatnya Revitalization, Self-Determination, and Regional Affairs. And I'd also like to recognize the presence of my colleagues, Senator Clint Rigel, Senator Therese Terlahi, and Senator Jim Moylan. And we might have a number of other colleagues joining us throughout the informational hearing, but I just wanted to say Sudus Masi to all of you for joining us. On our agenda this afternoon is the 9th Micronesia Nonprofit Congress, which was held at the Westin Guam Resort from March 13th to the 14th and hosted by Paduta Inc., Guam's umbrella organization, association for nonprofit organizations. With this year's theme as strengthening communities, our people, our land, our ocean, Paduta brought in Pacific Island leaders with the mission to elevate the standards for island communities and to advocate for sustainability. Key individuals representing nonprofit, business, and governmental sectors explored policy and practices around issues facing Guam and the larger Micronesian region. This joint informational briefing shall serve as a forum to inform our people and the legislature of the outcomes of this important assembly and the ways in which we can move forward given the information presented today. And I'm so pleased that we're able to do this again this year. Every time that Paduta is able to have their nonprofit congress, it's so important that you come and help to report back, not just to this policy-making body, but to the people of Guam and hopefully our region that can tune in and view this on YouTube as well. Just some general rules of conduct. When speaking, please ensure that your microphone is on and that you're speaking into the mic so we can record what's being said. The chair will invite individuals who've signed up to testify, and individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair. Please state your name and your title for our recording purposes. And then we'll begin with questioning from my colleagues after your initial presentation. And each member, just in the interest of time, we want to make sure that all of the members have an opportunity to pose their questions. And the questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance and the nature of this agenda. And just as a clarifying note, personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individual testifying will not be permitted. And with that, I hand it over to you, Ms. Sarah Thomas Nedadog, our fearless leader of Paduta and many other nonprofit organizations in Piango, to please introduce yourself and the panel. Sidus Masi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Senator Biscoe. Welcome again to the Policy Forum. I'm welcoming you, but this is your house. This is our house here at the legislature, but I say that because we're from Piango and Paduta are just so pleased to come to the legislature. And again, as Senator Lee said, we are again doing our policy forum, and this is our 9th year, and I think it's a great idea because it's really the beginning of our presentations to you here on Guam and our Guam legislature, to our people, and then we take it to all the different regional policymaker and relevant organizations throughout the Pacific. So thank you for having us here. Senator Marsh, Senator Moylan, Senator Terlahi, Senator Rigel. Today I am joined by my colleagues in the Pacific, from the Pacific Islands Association of Non-Governmental Organizations. To my right is Keu, and they can introduce themselves a little more as they begin to speak, but Keu is the vice chair for Piango, and he comes from the Cook Islands. To his right is Lavea, who's from Samoa, and he's also on our board of directors, as well as Alison Kellen from the Republic of the Marshall Islands. We have a couple of board members who were here and one that wasn't able to come from Solomon Islands and from Fiji. And then our director from the Secretariat Office, Emily Dui Tutaraga, was here on Guam but had to leave on Monday. And she's the person that basically runs Piango and Suva, Fiji. To my left, I'm joined by our Pazuta Board of Directors. To my left is our Vice Chair, Eddie Regis from Flame Tree Empowerment Center. Next to Eddie is Sam Elisugam, the Director of Gumamami Incorporated. And to his left is Kathleen Tolosa, the President of the Micronesian Youth Service Network. Joining us are our colleagues, Pilon Tamingel from the Republic of Belau, and Cindy Mori from the state of Chuuk. We also have Betty Segra, who remains back. We had a wonderful delegation from the state of Kushrai, and Andy George, Robson, Henry, and Skilling Jackson. And Betty Segra is here. Betty, can you please wave? She's from the state of Kushrai. And earlier we had Willie Koska. Many of you may have known him. He's an amazing person and a very passionate promoter and protector of our environment all throughout the Pacific. Willie Koska from Micronesian Conservation Trust. So I think that we've, and we have Frances Sablon, if I have not introduced her earlier, from the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. I think that rounds up our general representation. And again, I'd like to thank the Guam legislature for being with us throughout most of the week. Various members came to our variety of activities that really started on Sunday, and it went on to Monday. We had best practice showcase. We had focus group sessions that were focused on veterans and homelessness, on education, workforce development, and social and community issues. So the legislature was present there as well. And then, as you noted very eloquently, Senator Lee, we had the 9th Nonprofit Congress held at the Western Hotel on the 13th and 14th Wednesday and Thursday this week. So I think every time Pacific Islanders get together, and especially those of us who are very passionate about protecting and promoting our people and preserving our environment, it's inspiring, it's consoling, and it's very motivating. And when you have the partnership with the policymakers such as yourself, it goes a long way. So I just want to thank you for your presence this past week. I want to acknowledge Governor Lou Leon Guerrero and Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio, both of whom welcomed us at to the government house and to the governor's office this past week, and didn't just spend 15 minutes with us for a nice courtesy call, but really spent hours talking with us and talking to each of the various delegates from the different islands to understand what are some of the strategies and what are some of the things that we can do to intersect and to join together, because the waters join us together, and it's we can't get away. We're in this together, and we know it, we understand it, and we appreciate it. And to know now that we have people at the helm of our government that speak the same language as we do, have the same heart that we do, and are committed to the same vision as the community-based organizations and community advocates like us have, is really exhilarating, and we're just so very thankful. So with that in mind, I'd like to share with you the resolutions that were adopted yesterday at the 9th Nonprofit Congress. If there are any questions or comments before I get to this, we're open to that. Is there anyone from Piango or Pizzuta that would like to say a few words before we get into the resolutions, or would you like to wait until afterwards? Okay. Thank you very much. So just a little bit of an overview. At the end of each Congress, we do get together, and throughout the week and throughout, especially the last, the 2 days that we're in the Congress together, we begin to develop our resolutions, which are things that we're committed to doing in the next year. So we have resolutions from the years before that also continue to be valid. We use them when we make presentations to our board members, to our policymakers, to our chief executives, when we go to the United Nations, when we are in or to the federal government for that matter, or in our grant applications and proposals that we write, we will reference the resolutions that have been passed this year, last year, and the year before. So these resolutions serve as guides and reminders of things that we are committed to doing individually as nonprofit organizations, civil society organizations, community-based entities for the coming year. And we don't put it on the shelf. We look at it on a regular basis, and Pizzuta and Piango reference them throughout the year. So we bring them forward, and some of them are very clear policy-related resolutions that you may consider developing or drafting bills that would speak to these, if you'd like, or you may see us, not you will see us come back to you and say, this is on our agenda, and we'd like to ask you to join us and to support us by sponsoring a bill that speaks to it. So some of these are things that we will take the lead. Some of these things we're going to ask you to help us with. And some of these resolutions will go to other entities that are in the private business sector or other regional, sub-regional, or global partners. So I'll go ahead, and how this goes is that each of us take turns presenting to you a particular resolution. So the first one, we'll have Eddie Regis, our Vice Chair, share with you.
Thank you, Sarah. Madam Chair, Senators. In line with the United Nations endorsement of the Sustainable Development Goal number 17, which encourages and promotes public-private partnerships, one of the ways we felt that it would be to help define that and solidify that partnership is to that the Congress supported legislation that would require government agencies to partner with nonprofit organizations in the provisions of services to our people. And that could be done in a couple ways. And one prime example is the Republic of the Marshall Islands. Their National Liaison Unit actually just recently received an annual appropriation to help solidify the commitment of the government in order to, for nonprofit organizations to help provide services to the people and improve the services. Another item that was brought up during that was maybe preference points could be included in requests for proposals that are issued out, and And nonprofit organizations that apply could potentially get preference points, just like service-disabled vets would get preference points. And I think another point that I would make would be is for legislation to encourage the private sector to also subcontract to nonprofit organizations or help employ the underserved or at-risk individuals as a way to show their commitment as far as the commitment for public-private partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. The second is encourage and support the Governor of Guam to take a lead role in the Micronesian Island Forum and to promote non-governmental organizations, civil society, and civil society organizations partnerships. And this is pretty much what Eddie just shared. And I'm very pleased to say that this has already been an area that Governor Liu and Lieutenant Governor Josh fully embrace. And the Micronesian Islands Forum, as many of you know, is the organization of Micronesian chief executives. So the presidents and the governors from throughout Micronesia do convene. And we understand that the Micronesian Island Forum was initially planned for the end of April, but maybe moved to July. And will be held in the beautiful island of Chuuk. And we have our representative, Cindy Mori, here, who will be our NGO liaison. But of course, you all are members of APIL, and we hope that you will do the same thing. And when you see Governor Liu, let's spur her on with MIF and do everything we can to help support her participation in MIF. The next resolution, we will ask KU, our Vice Chair from Piango, to share with you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you also to the legislature today. The next item is that to request to present at sub-regional and Pacific regional organizations such as Pacific Island Forum Secretariat, the Pacific Islands Development Forum, the Micronesian Islands Forum, Pacific Islands Health Officers Association. This also links on to the first two when we talk about partnerships in SDG 17. Although not binding, but it is a solemn declaration that countries will try and align with the SDGs. And in 17 is creating that partnership. But this is really to look at awareness and genuine partnership and meaningful, as we know that the social NGOs and CSOs are at the grassroots in delivering social services. I think in that capacity there is more work being done around the Pacific, and whilst I have the microphone and I've just been around the island and also noted today visiting Sanctuary and ICANN resources. They are doing a very good job, and I think they should be commended. And through Patuta, and also Congress. Thank you. And I come to the next point, is to propose specific strategies to increase partnerships between the non-government organizations, NGOs, civil society organizations, private sector, chambers of commerce, and government institutions. One of the things that have come to light in the last 4 years is that the Pacific Island Forum Secretariat, as an example, put together and adopted an NSA desk at the Forum Secretariat. This is really to handle and to accommodate CSOs and non-state actors, and our Pacific Island governments bringing CSOs to the fore. And it's been 4 years, that we've actually had the opportunity as CSO leaders to sit with our leaders at the Leaders Forum. And we've been very, we are very happy to be doing this as part of that. And I'm just also happy that the Governor Liu Guerrero, and Lieutenant Governor Josh has also highlighted that you have a CSO desk at within the system to allow that closeness between CSOs and government. So I thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Keu. We'd like to ask now our Piango Board Member Lavere from Samoa to present our next resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I am taking the task assigned to me, I would like to take this opportunity to say on behalf of our people from Samoa, the civil society organization, and Piango, I would like to express our sincere appreciations and gratitude for this very rare opportunity to step in your Congress House and House of Legislators. Thank you. Our next resolution is to seek assistance from government to assist in providing technical assistance sessions in all of our islands to understand better Agenda 2030 and the 17th Sustainable Development Goals. The prime and the chief goal of this is to make sure that our people in this part of the world, especially of grassroots levels, are not left behind. Then the other resolutions with my name on it: quarterly review of non-government organizations, civil societies organizations, participations in the respective countries' voluntary national review to the United Nations.
Thank you, Member Lavere. We'll talk a little bit at the end for those of you that may not be familiar with the Voluntary National Review. That's part of Agenda 2030 of the United Nations, where each of the countries report out on how they're doing with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We have Sam Elasuga, who will now present on the next resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I share the resolution, I just want to pay my respect to our fellow government leaders, the senators. Thank you for allowing us to sit in front of you this afternoon, and for taking the time out to hear some of our resolutions. So the resolution, one of the resolutions that we have is to perform inventory of issues affecting Pacific Islanders and promoting effective results. This resolution came out of a lot of the discussions that we've had the last few days. Some of the discussions highlighted the fact that we share some issues across our region. And one of the things that we think we can really benefit from is to really have an inventory of the issues and look at them and share information and strategies and how we work on addressing the different issues. While we're requesting to partner with the government, we also want to strengthen the collaboration between the different organizations in our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. The next one is continue to build greater capacity of governance and organizational leadership. So we want you to know that when you come to the NGOs, that we have our act together. We encourage and support accreditation. We encourage and support the highest standards of conduct and ethical behavior. And we do training, Pazuta and Piango do training and technical assistance to that end. So I think that's important as we formulate and move forward together, that the legislature knows that we have a commitment to those standards. We don't want to enter into a relationship with someone and we ourselves don't carry out our fiduciary responsibility or practice good governance and leadership. So it's a mainstay for us that we always have that on the top of our minds, that we're always doing training, consultation, and pulling up with us the smaller nonprofits or the community organizations that are starting to form. And there's a lot of really wonderful efforts that we see growing as a result of changing needs or a consciousness that may develop in a community. And I know that you as senators will get many people coming to your office asking you questions about services or asking you to start something. And we just want you to know that we're here to help support you in that, and that we're also very much dedicated to a higher standard of service and high ethical conduct. So that's that particular resolution. The next one, I will have our Vice Chair Keu discuss this with you. Number 8.
Thank you, Madam Chair, colleagues. And number 8 is, Resolution 8 is utilize Pacific Island Association of NGOs, PIANGO, to further support the national liaison units to do more capacity strengthening. This resolution talks about the support of PIANGO to all our NLUs around the Pacific. As we know, we have 24 member countries with their own members associated. For instance, I'll just give you an example of the Cook Islands. We have 111 member groups, organizations that are under our national umbrella organization. But this is really seeking the endorsement that PIANGO becomes that conduit, becomes the organization that promotes and supports all our NLUs. And one of the things in also linking it with Madam Chair's intervention in number 7 is that we're also part of international fora of instruments that allow CSOs to act independently. However, they must also be like government to be able to undergo governance arrangements that are also in line with the laws of each of the islands. And in this case also is the opportunity for us to look deeply into other issues surrounding PIANGO's strategic plans, strategic focal points. They involve indigenous people, they involve women, youth, the people with disability, and most importantly, some of the issues surrounding our nation's, the climate change crises that we undertake, and notably in our Pacific Island countries. We're also looking at, we will all be in the age of 60, our generation, and there's age care that we need to look at also and undertake the assessment of our elderly and policies to look after our elderly people. Health and education becomes also at the top of the agenda. And this, by using PIANGO as the vehicle to be able to do this. So I'm hoping that we can all take this on board. Thank you.
The next item is to request the U.S. Department of Interior to support an assessment of non-governmental organization contributions and a collection of profiles as employers, volunteer mobilizers, and the amount of funding generated to do the work and bring in resources to our various islands. Primarily this was, we determined that too often we look at the input of nonprofit organizations individually, but we feel that collectively we can show strength in our numbers and the amount of funding that we bring in order to improve the services. We see this as potentially being under the lead of Piango as the organizer of the information or the portal for this information, so that you as legislators, when you're looking at policy, you can use it in any justification as well as to our chief executives. Thank you.
All right, the next resolution is to promote and document best practices in our services to our people in the Pacific. Again, this came out in our discussions on the issues and the strategies that we utilize in different parts of the Pacific to address these issues, because we find that some other jurisdictions are able to address some of these issues more effectively than other parts. We feel that if we document them and share the best practices, then we can all improve the situation in the region as a whole. Thank you.
Our next resolution was specifically identified crafts with a cause, and that was presented to us as a model in which we can reach out to those, particularly mothers who are at home with underage or under school age children who don't have the ability or the opportunity to go out and work, but should stay home or need to stay home or choose to stay home to take care of their children, but at the same time need to generate some revenue and practice some skills or learn some skills that can be used to add to their family income. So I think the focus here is it could be crafts for a cause, it could be agriculture, it could be anything really in which we try to promote micro-enterprise among our people who are perhaps on welfare or have a very limited income for whatever reasons, because the dependency on, I think, programs, welfare programs, or they may not be a forever thing, and it should not be a forever thing, but what we want to do and we want to promote is that there are some life skills and there are some vocational skills that they can learn while they are at home at the same time carrying out their caregiving roles. And as you know, in our beautiful cultures of Guam, Micronesia, and the Pacific, we also care for our persons with disabilities and our elderly. And we don't want to discourage that. We have enough of our members of our families that have to leave home every day to go to work. And if you have a household of 6, 4 of them are probably out there, trying to bring in an income to support those 6 members. So we need to, as much as possible, find ways in which we can reach out to these families who are at home for whatever reasons and find micro-enterprise and other small business opportunities to help them gain greater income. So that was really a wonderful discussion, and it resulted in a resolution, and Crafts with a Cause was just an example of what can happen from that.
The next, actually 2 items I'm going to cover are specific to services for our veterans. It's to support and expand annual veteran summits to address veterans' homelessness and specialized services to veterans and their families, as well as to advocate for expansion of veteran services to the Commonwealth of Northern Marianas, Republic of the Marshall Islands, Republic of, or Federated States of Micronesia, and the Republic of Palau with a base on Guam. There was a support from our brothers and sisters from the outer islands to look at services on Guam because there is an effort to establish a community living center here on the island, and it seemed like there was overwhelming support of that. But the other thing too is we're very fortunate that one of our brothers from Kosrae has actually been appointed by the Secretary of Veteran Affairs to be on the Minority Veterans Committee. And he's represented. And when we met with Governor Lilian Guerrero, she indicated that the Secretary of Veterans Affairs would be coming to the island. So I think this is really an opportunity, especially under the new legislature and the new administration, that we might be able to be well prepared for that meeting so that we can really push our agenda, because it's a great opportunity that should not be missed. And our request would be to ensure that our brother from Kosrae is invited to that event, and it would be helpful for him to bring information. But this is the opportunity for us to really collect the data that's needed to support, you know, increased funding in this particular area, a much needed area. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we are at number 14. We'd like to ask our sister from Republic of Bilal, Bilam Temengel, to report on number 14.
Good afternoon. Before I say something, I just wanted to say that I'm honored and very humbled to be in front of you, and I'm bringing greetings from the island of Republic of Palau. Okay, number 14 is funding to Pachuta and other national liaison units annually appropriated by various legislature. And I'm very impressed during this course of this one week that we've been here, that how much support Pachuta is getting from the government as well as the legislature. So I would like, and as well as RMI. So I would really like to see if we can work, talk to your colleague from APIL, because in Palau that there really not that partnership between the government and the CSO. So I really would like to see if we can have a little side discussion with your fellow people, senators and leaders from Palau in regards to funding for CSO. And this falls under SDG number 17, forming that partnership. And it's not in our part of our culture, so it's really that division between. I mean, there is really, because this is the only time, because we're reporting, Palau is reporting for the voluntary national report in July. And it's Bango, the NGO liaison office, that's sort of bringing the government, bringing us into the picture, forcing the government to sit down and, you know, discuss this, the SDGs. So I would like to, and right now we don't have any funding, so if they can appropriate some little funding for the CSOs and all the NLUs. Thank you very much.
Alson will report on 15. Thank you, Pilon.
Yeah, thank you. The next one is request Pacific Islands Association Non-Government Organization, or PIANGO, to establish a Pacific calendar and circulate to all national liaison units weekly. And this is very important because we, as we all scatter all over the Pacific, there are many opportunities that we could share and to enhance our individual NLUs. And this is a especially now, this is a pretty crucial thing that we need to do.
Thank you, Alson. And I just want to say we're going to share that with you as well, because just in the next 6 months, we have incredible regional, sub-regional, and global events where oftentimes Guam is absent. And the joy of the position that the Guam is in, and I have said this many times, Guam's an anomaly because we are closely aligned with the United States, but yet we are Pacific Islanders. So we have the opportunity to connect with our Pacific Island brothers and sisters and be at the UN through them, through the United Nations, or go through the United States and also be at the UN. So we have that opportunity. So thank you, Alson, for bringing that up. I'd like to ask Cindy Mori from the state of Chuuk to report on number 17.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Before I go on, I'd like to pay my respects to this honorable body, and thank you for this opportunity to be here. Tiro and Régine from the state of Chuuk. Okay. Number 17 discusses participation in the Regional Workforce Development Council in Micronesia, administered by the various governmental labor agencies. This might require legislation and policy formalizing or organizing our island nations and requiring improvement in our workforce as we strive to improve our respective economic conditions individually and collectively within our blue continent, within our Pacific. Case in point is current legislation appropriating funds to commission a study justifying the need for a workforce development center in Chuuk. This is currently ongoing, and we're optimistic that this will come to fruition, and we'll see this very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. I'd like to ask Kathleen Tolosa from the Micronesian Youth Service Network to report out on 18 and 19.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And before I move on, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of the youth serving organizations under the membership of the Micronesian Youth Services Network, we thank you for creating this space just for the youth. I'd like to present resolution number 18, partnering with public school systems to reach families and parents with youth at risk to provide education and support. With the high suicide rates that we have here at home, at least 10 days, we have a new suicide attempt completed. With the STD rates increasing, and with a third of the new infections in our youth population between the ages of 15 to 24. And with addressing the racial bias and disparities and all these social determinants of health that are affecting our youth, I would like to ask your support in creating a school-based health services, providing easier access to these critical resources that will increase the likelihood of our youth to succeed academically, and also to provide family preservation programs through partnership with NGOs here in our home. I'd like to even go further in challenging our community to explore a youth consortium that will regularly convene youth-serving entities from the government, private, and nonprofit sectors to decrease these negative social determinants of health through collaborative partnerships. I think it really will embody the proverb that says it takes a village to raise a child. The next resolution that I would like to present is a live streaming of sub-regional and regional events that will be presented. Bazuta would like to take the lead of the legislature in having the same tools that will further close the gap and allow our large ocean states a little bit closer to each other and share these policies and best practices that have been proven effective in protecting our communities. Thank you.
I am going to, so the next resolution is resolution number 20, is ensure that all sectors are represented from non-government organizations, NGOs, government, and business sectors in sustainable and capacity strengthening events. I think this is very important in order to address our issues in our countries, and also as we liaise with our brother countries throughout the Pacific Islands. And also right now, as our countries, some of our countries are doing their NVR and working on the Agenda 2030 and SDGs. Thank you.
I basically addressed Resolution 21 in my initial remarks on Resolution number 1, but I'll go ahead and read it. Advocate for favorable preference points in the public procurement process. Resolution 22 is to provide the brief of the 9th Micronesia Nonprofit Congress resolutions to the chief executives of the respective Micronesian islands and Pacific countries by April 15, 2019. And this is in line with the support and that we received from Governor Lilian Guerrero and Lieutenant Governor Josh Norio to help promote and support the public-private partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. On Resolution 23, looking at the initiate partnerships between Micronesian Conservation Trust, the Pacific Island Association of NGOs, PIANGO, and other national liaison units to support activities in the Pacific region. This is an initiative that arose yesterday during the Congress, and it was one that falls into the area of being recognized at the United Nations. In the PIANGO is an ECOSOC entry point into the United Nations, along with the Pacific Disability Foundation. And to note, yesterday we found out that this is another third Pacific Island group that have access to the United Nations. And this is really in putting together a strong voice for the Pacific to the United Nations. As we all know, this is one of 6 of the principal organs of the United Nations where debate and a lively reflection of issues surround, especially for the nation, Pacific Island countries, those who are registered with PIANGO, with Pachuta, will have access to the United Nations ECOSOC system and to certify that they are a genuine group of people. And this is one thing that we'd like to build on out of this Congress to ensure that we did have this support from each of our regional organizations and national liaison units. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Pilon, will you please report on 24?
Okay, our resolution number 24, the last resolution, is encourage more women to join non-governmental organizations and national liaison units. This is just to go out for us, like me as a member of PIANGO, to sort of go out there and encourage those who are, especially the marginalized group. There will be a great help if we are going to recruit them to be part of the national unit in their own respective, and especially in the social issues. I'm very passionate about the social issues. I really want to encourage that women, if we get them together, if they can be a part, they can benefit from the services that we are providing, and they'll be made aware of and can be help them too.
Thank you, Pilom, and members of our PIANGO and Pazuta Board of Directors. I want to do a summary of our presentation, and I know that you may not know all the different things that we do when we go back home other than being board members, but the organizations that we represent, for example, in the Cook Islands, they have 111 NGOs that are under their umbrella organization. So in every one of our areas, we have, you know, as small as 10 and up to 300 civil society and nonprofit organizations who are on the ground doing work with persons with disabilities, persons with behavioral health issues, dealing with drug and alcohol problems, dealing with domestic violence. We collectively in PIANGO strategize to deal with some very serious and complicated issues such as international human trafficking, the current climate crises where some of our islands, even in Micronesia, are already underwater. the lack of or minimal access to quality health care. Of course, we struggle with continuously in my 42 years of work in human services, employment, housing, and education for all of our people. And Guam's still one of the 17 on the UN's list of colonized areas. So self-determination is a very big part of what we do at Piango as well. So I wanted to share that with you, and to also let you know that many years ago, the Association of Pacific Island Legislatures, APIL, of which you are all members of, took in Pazuta as a sister organization. And later on, several years later, took on the Micronesian Youth Service Network as a sister organization. And you know, of course, that Ajuda Foundation is also another sister organization. So every General Assembly of APIL and every Board of Directors, there's supposed to be space there for us to report out and to make recommendations and suggestions to you, our policymakers, about the state of affairs. So I just wanted to make that note to you about our relationship with APIL. I also want to share that it was referenced earlier by KU that there's only 3 Pacific groups that are part of ECOSOC, which is the economic and social arm of the United Nations. And this group is what really feeds issues into the United Nations. And Piango and the Pacific Disabilities Forum and the Conservation Society Trust are the 3 in the Pacific. So it is through these 3 entities that we can partner together to bring our issues to the United Nations. So I really want us to capitalize on this wonderful opportunity that we have to bring our issues from self-determination to international human trafficking to quality health care for the AAPI community outside of the continental United States or outside of the United States or within our sub-regions forward. So I invite you to partner with us to work through these entities to go to the United Nations with our issues. It was also referenced that what is called the National Volunteer Review is where the Pacific Islands goes before the United Nations and reports out what the progress is of Agenda 2030. Agenda 2030 is the roadmap that our global community through the United Nations has committed to. So it includes 17 sustainable development goals from education, poverty, sanitation, to 17, which we've referenced several times today, which necessitates and encourages the partnership between government, the nonprofit and civil society, private business, and regional south-south, north-south relationships, but partnerships so that we can together make sure that the 16 Sustainable Development Goals are being reached. Now, our challenge on Guam is that somewhere in the federal government, they're reporting out somewhere, and that link to this day has not been found because no one has been able to say, this is the federal agency that's taking the lead for the United States. So we have a choice of going either which way, going through and finding the entity within the United States that reports out to the United Nations on Agenda 2030. We could actually do both, or work through the Piango to report out and to influence the United Nations for Agenda 2030. So as I said, we're an anomaly, but we're actually in an awesome place to work it both ways as Pacific Islanders and as U.S. citizens. What has also become alarming to us this past week is to know that Guam has returned millions of dollars to the federal government because they've been unspent or programs that haven't been implemented as they should have. Millions. And when millions of dollars are returned to the federal government, it sends really three messages. One, we're poor planners. Two, we really don't have a need. Three, we don't have the talent to make it happen. We propose to you that none of those are true. We do, in fact, have the capacity to be good planners. We do have many unmet needs in this community, and we do have the talent. And we ask you, we plead with you in your role as policymakers and those that help keep our government accountable and our community motivated and directed, that we work very hard collectively not to let this happen. This is the end. In 2 weeks, we will end the second quarter of this fiscal year. That means we have 6 months to determine how much money we are going to return to the federal government. And if the number now is 50 million, I would like to say, let's get on the stick now, and let's see how we can reduce that number together. I, by no means, are saying that the nonprofit community can do it all. Certainly, the government of Guam can't do it all. The private business sector can't do it all. But I'll tell you for sure, if we commit together, we can make a dent. So we have 6 months to make sure that we put a dent in that figure and not let that be what we're going to report out next year, that we return millions of dollars of unspent monies to the federal government. And I ask you to please put that on the top of your agenda. Some of you, we are already on speed dial and text, and we make that commitment to you. We will do everything we can to make sure that we stay within the realm of the rules and regulations of all these federal grants, of which all of us know very well, but implement those programs so that our people get the services that were intended for them and the support that they need. And of course, you know who suffers from it? The ones that are most vulnerable and disenfranchised. That's our people who suffer from the return of these funds. The other area, we want to have a special session with any of your committees or the committees that you think is best to really understand Agenda 2030 and all the sustainable development goals so that we can craft out our strategy here in Guam and we can model that throughout the Pacific and through APIL and through MIF. The other issue that I want to make sure was also brought up is, I'm sure that you can imagine that with the federal government, we have some limitations in terms of gaining their support, although we already know we're returning some money, but there are some limitations. And coming together as a sub-region or region is really important because, for example, Piango has support from the European Union. Our brothers and sisters that sit around the table have support from Australia and New Zealand. And so together we work collectively in the nonprofit sector to minimize the barriers that we're presented with. Oftentimes in government, we have layers and layers of bureaucracies that we need to contend with, which is very understandable and necessary. But we suggest to you that there are some things that the nonprofit sector and civil society can carry out that may be able to get beyond some of those and expedite and to ensure greater efficiency. And because the amount of work that we do and money we get can leverage far more than oftentimes what our government is able to do. In other words, you give us $1, I will tell you right now, your return is going to be like 3-4 times that amount, because we're able to get volunteers, we're able to get businesses to participate with us, and we're able to get the cooperation and collaboration. We were also very pleased by the commitment that Governor Liu and Lieutenant Governor Joshua made to us, and they said 2 things. One, they're going to have a desk at the governor's office for the nonprofit sector. So there is going to be a desk. We saw the desk. It is actually there at the governor's office, ready for us to occupy. The second thing they committed to is meeting with us quarterly to go over what these issues are, what the status is, and what are some ways that we can intersect and support each other. We had that first meeting on, was it Monday? Monday, March 11th. We come to you humbly to ask you to also commit to a quarterly meeting with the nonprofits. And with that, I would like to close our comments unless anyone from our panel would like to make closing remarks. Or is there anyone that would like to make additional remarks before we...
Can I just say something? My colleagues note here, I'm really passionate about this partnership and relationship. But as Keio mentioned in the Pacific Island Forum, they're accommodating the CSO and the private sector. So we have the organization, they call it PIPSO, it's a private sector as well as the CSO. They do have a desk in the Pacific Island Forum office. But Guam is not a part of PIDF, PIF. So I would really like us, every time there's the forum, the Pacific Island Forum, they get the CSO and the private sector to sit down and talk. And then they present. They're giving them a space for the private sector and for CSO to bring in their issues into them. And KU and I have been a part of it. So, and I really would like to see that happen in the North Pacific, because you are not part of the PIF, so you're not in that area. So I would really like to see that we have the same type of a model here in the North Pacific before APIL or before MIF, so we can sit down together, because at the end of the day, we're serving the same people. Yeah, the government, the private sector, the CSOs are serving the same people. So I think it's really important that we sit down together, that we have that dialogue between us before, and then present our position to the leaders in the greater Micronesian area. So I really would like to see that, if you can work on that and see how I will do my part when I go home, try to. So, but I think that's really important, because I just want to make sure, because we do have a voice in the Pacific in PIF, but CNMI and Guam doesn't, and I want that sort of type of a model, because I see it's very effective for that communication and dialogue between the leaders and the CSO and PIF. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah and team, for sharing all of these awesome community resolutions from this latest nonprofit Congress. And at this time, I just wanted to give my colleagues an opportunity to make any comments or ask any questions of the panel. We have with us a chair of the Committee on Economic Development, Agriculture, Maritime Transportation, Power and Energy, Utilities, and Emergency Response, Senator Clint Rigel. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Senator. I just want to say I'm very happy to be here, and I commend all of you for all of the hard work that you all do with these different NGOs and NPOs, right, nonprofit organizations. I think it's wonderful I'm here to support you any way I can. Let me know if there's anything we can do to support you. I appreciate a lot of the points. There's a lot of great things in these 24 different points here. There's a lot of great things in here. One in particular I want to touch on is number 18, right? Partnering with the public school system to reach out to parents and families with youth at risk. And I've been meeting with some members of the Micronesian student organizations of the different high schools. I've met with them a couple times to start this dialogue about what we can do to help improve their situations in the public school system, and reach out to them to find out what are their challenges and what they can do to help encourage their fellow students from the different islands in the FAS region that are going to school here on Guam, living here on Guam, how they can improve not only the stereotype and sort of the negative stigma attached to them and provide a positive stereotype and change the conversation from a negative conversation to a positive conversation, and also how they can help add sort of a reverse peer pressure where the good kids are peer pressuring the kids who are getting into trouble. I don't want to say bad kids. I don't think anyone's a bad person. I think people get into trouble and do bad things, right? So we need to work on sort of reverse peer pressuring them, and that's what I spoke to some of these kids about. And I like that that's one of the issues you have here is reaching out to parents and families with the youth that are at risk and finding out ways to address that. And as she was mentioning, it takes a village to raise a child kind of attitude. I think that's something we need to really look at more. And so I commend you for having that as one of your points here. And any way I can help you with that, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. And we also have joining Senator Therese Terlahi, and she is the chairperson of the Committee on Health, Tourism, Historic Preservation, Land, and Justice.
Thank you all for being here today, and congratulations on your 9th Congress, your successful work that you've done all throughout the year. It's inspiring to us that you're very dedicated to this, and I appreciate your presentation today. It has very practical recommendations. It also shows us what you are going to work on, and it gives us recommendations on what we can work on and how we can help. And I also like the comments that you made, Sarah, regarding strategy. And I agree that the issues that we are addressing in our region they require a united strategy, and we have to be as smart as we absolutely can be. And we have no shortage of that, but we just need to get it together. And so I want to thank you all. Thank you very much for all your work. Situsmasi.
Situsmasi, Senator. I also really want to thank you all so much for your time and your dedication and your individual roles, but for coming together as you always do, to really put your heads together and come up with these very solid resolutions. And it's kind of a blueprint for us to continue the work. I also circulated last year's resolutions to my colleagues. So one of the things that jumped out to me last year that was really striking that one of your members had presented, and I think it's also presented in this year's strategy, but really a focus, and I know that you might have some exciting things to report perhaps on the domestic violence and sexual assault front. I think when we had this conversation last year, there was a member organization that brought it to our attention and asked that we push it with our colleagues at APIL, and I think there's been some progress on that score. Sarah, can you please update us?
Yes, there was a law that was recently passed, and it was, Sam has gone to APIL and so has Kat, but I believe that law was passed in Pohnpei, and it was landmark legislation, because now they have laws that protect women and children from domestic violence. And I'd like to ask Kat or Sam if you want to speak further to that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe our colleague Marcella Jack, she's an attorney that has been working with many of the CSOs in Pohnpei, pushed for that legislation, and also want to make a mention that Kasrai had also passed a similar legislation.
Thank you so much. I think that just goes to show that these examples of these resolutions that we place out, we kind of put the marker out, and everybody needs to rush to meet those markers. And a lot of the members of PDUTA and our colleagues in other legislatures are working really hard to address these very important goals. And I think it just helps to give us a little bit of light at the end of that tunnel so that we can continue to push forward. There's many issues you mentioned with youth, some with our veterans that we're working with our local organizations to address. Obviously, domestic violence and sexual assault is a huge challenge that we all have in all of our different island nations, as well as substance abuse, and the list goes on and on. But I think it's important that we stop every once in a while and acknowledge the progress that's been made, and just use that to sustain us for the fight as we continue. I also just wanted to give you the opportunity, Sarah, to just give us contact information for PDUTA and a website, so the folks that are listening or watching online or watching on TV, if they so desire to connect with you and all of the different nonprofit organizations under PDUTA, if they'd like to volunteer or lend support, how might they be able to do that?
Thank you, Senator. I do want to add to you and to all the senators of our Guam legislature, as well as the members of APIL, that if any legislator or legislature would like to introduce any of these resolutions from this year or the previous year, we'll be like your extension of your staff. We'll go and mobilize the community to come in and to do, to bring oral and written testimony before you to support these. So I want you to know that we're not going to just give this to you and you're all on your own, but we will be there to support any legislation that you should introduce that is around these issues and or relevant issues. And we want you to be able to use us as a reference, and you can also use this to cite in your draft legislation, and you can call on us from Guam or from any part of the region or in the Pacific. And we've done this before as well. When legislations come up, we've gone to our Piango office and said, can you research what legislation around the 24 countries have been adopted similar to this? And then we've done that. So I just want you to know that we're also very pleased and humbled if we could be a resource to you. So we have Yvonne Napati, who is our Pacific Partnership liaison. She plays many roles with us at West Care Pacific Island, but that's one of her key, and she can speak to the contact information for PDUTA and Piango.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Contact information for PDUTA, the phone number is 969-2613. They can send us an email at pdutainc@gmail.com. And they can also check out our website at www.pdutainc.org. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I also would be remiss if I didn't mention numbers 17 and 19. Those deal directly with the committee that I chair. So that's the Committee on Federal and Foreign Relations, Tech and Telecommunications, and Labor. So the Regional Workforce Development Council is something that I'm very interested, as well as live streaming sub-regional and regional events to document our discussions. I think that's really important. And before we close today, I also want to commit to you that we will look forward to scheduling depending on our schedules. We'll want to schedule another info briefing so you can update us on the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and we can develop further strategy around that, as well as a quarterly update with our nonprofit organization. So I am happy to continue our work with you. I think that the work that you all do on a daily basis is so important and really helping to fill in the gaps where government and our business sector is unable. So thank you, and Dunkulan Asidus Maasi, on behalf of all of the people of Guam, on behalf of my colleagues. Thank you so much, colleagues, for joining me. And just as we close out this informational briefing, I just really want to say Sidus Maasi for all of your hard work. to the Committee on Federal and Foreign Affairs, Telecommunications, Technology, and Labor, and the Committee on Heritage and the Arts, Parks, Guam Products, Hagåtña Revitalization, Self-Determination, and Regional Affairs hereby concludes this joint informational briefing. Additional written testimonies may be submitted through email to Senator Biscoe Lee at guamlegislature.org, or they may be hand-delivered to our offices at 163 Chalan Santo Papa right here at the Guam Congress Building. This joint informational briefing is now adjourned. The time is 3:45 p.m. And again, undang kluna si Tuis Maasi. Thank you so much.